The momentum in the stock market eased last week with the all-share index declining 2.2% week on week following the largely peaceful conclusion of the election season over the weekend. Could we see a turnaround in market sentiment this week? Robert Omotunde, investment researcher at Afrinvest, joins us now. Robert, it's great to have you on the show with us. Let's kick off with those earnings that came through from Unilever. Of course, you heard everything I said right there. We have Q1 numbers out, revenue down as well, 3%. Revenue up, 8%. Now, is there value in this stock for long-term investors?
Well, thank you for having me once again. For long-term investors, of course, there is always value, particularly in the consumer goods space. But currently, the challenges that bedevil the performance of Unilever at the moment is sort of some operational issues that the company is having. We know that the Unilever operates in a space that it's largely regarded as the personal care space of the consumer goods sector, and is a space that is usually driven by the consumer spending pattern, so to speak. And of course, we saw that the company was able to grow its revenue, notwithstanding the challenges that the country is facing in terms of operations in the northern region. But of course, that growth in top line could not translate into profits. It could not translate into PAT growth. Of course, the company was still able to, make profit.
Well, it looks like things have turned around because in the full year numbers, we had a revenue actually down, and then Q1 it rose 8%. So it looks like in the past 3 months of the year, that there's been a slight turnaround.
Of course, for a full year, you saw that the company was not able to sustain a year-on-year growth, of course. But this is just a first quarter result, one of such cycles that companies go through. It might be instructive to say that perhaps the company is entering into a year that will portend great numbers for them in terms of turnover growth. But of course, what we are seeing in their profit may not be disconnected with the finance charge that the company is paying. The company is somewhat levered towards debt capital, and it might be instructive for the company as well to look at some ways in which they can do some form of reconstruction of their capital.
So given that, people who are actually holding this stock, Unilever, how should they play the market going forward?
Currently, this result is definitely going to impact on the performance of the stock, because we expect the market to punish Unilever for this, if I may say, poor performance. And what would they expect for the polity in Nigeria that is more or less stabilizing? We're expecting that investors, particularly the foreign investors, more so that the company recently announced, the parent company announced to increase its stake, in Unilever Nigeria. It might be some form of positive for foreign investors to take position. Now that the elections are over and we know that Nigeria is more or less stable politically, we would expect that certain sentiments might want to push some counters, particularly within the consumer goods space. But again, this result is somewhat going to constitute a drag for Unilever. But by and large, we expect that on a long term, for long-term investors, Unilever might not be, a bad stock to have in your portfolio.
Speaking about the close of the election season in Nigeria, obviously after the presidential elections, we saw the stock market rally significantly. Now, given that the gubernatorial elections are over, of course, results are still coming in today. Do you expect that the market is going to react as positively as what we saw happen 2 weeks ago?
I would think so, because if you remember, as soon as the presidential election results, was declared, and everywhere, was kind of calm, we saw what the market experienced: 8% gain in a appreciation in a particular, trading day. That has never happened in the history of, the Nigerian stock exchange. But of course, we saw some profit taking last week when certain investors, took profits of the, temporary gains that they made. I also believe that the market might be, watching what, or before now, may have been looking at what the gubernatorial elections was going to look like, and they were able to see over the weekend that elections were largely peaceful, and of course right now some results have been declared. We are also expecting some other results, so it will not be out of place to see the market, fully come back with a full confidence. Don't forget that we still have, the macroeconomic issues that are still there, the dwindling revenue of the government. These are still, factors that investors may want to price. But again, the fact that the polity is now stable is positive for the market. So it will not be unexpected to see market rebound.
Is there indication that we're starting to see foreign investors coming back into the market, or is much of this demand still local?
Definitely, foreign investors are kind of finding their way back to the market. Of course, local investors are still playing, but the major issue for foreign investors has been the instability in our polity, and now there's some sort of confidence that's returned into the market, and so we would expect that the risk about our polity is no longer there. So foreign investors will now want to price the real intrinsic values of stocks, and of course the fundamentals of the economy will now begin to be appropriately priced by some of these investors. So foreign investors indeed are more or less back in our market now.
And let's talk PZ. We saw Q3 profits drop 28%, PBT down 23%. There was an interim dividend of 20 kobo. Yeah. Tell us how you feel about those earnings, and is that dividend yield strong enough, do you think?
Yeah, PZ is also playing within the space. PZ and Unilever operate in the same industry, more or less. And of course, what we have seen with the PZ numbers for their, half year, their third quarter is showing to us that is more or less like an industry experience. But again, like I said, foreign investors they like to target certain stocks, that they have more or less foreign affiliations, and because of that, we may see some rally, particularly in PZ. PZ and Unilever, when compared in terms of pricing, PZ still portends some upside, in terms of what the stock has historically done in terms of the pricing. So we might see some investors taking position in that. But of course, the result is disappointing. But again, it's the third quarter result. We're expecting their full year somewhat in the third quarter of the year. So investors might be expectant that the company might still do something positive.
All right, Robert, let's leave it there. Thanks so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
That was Robert Omotunde, investment researcher at Afrinvest.